Admiral Tavron stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the star map display with satisfaction. 200 ships of the Velkan Empire moved through space like a metal storm cloud. Each ship was a weapon of destruction that had conquered worlds across 17 different star systems. Today they would add the 18th. The human colony world called New Sol hung in space ahead of them like a blue and green jewel. Intelligence reports said it held 3 million humans and produced food for 12 other human worlds. Taking it would cripple human supply lines in this sector and force them to surrender other colonies without a fight. Admiral, his second-in-command reported, "We detect only one human ship defending the planet." Tavron's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. "One ship? Are you certain?" "Yes, Admiral. It appears to be a mid-sized cruiser. Our computers identify it as the vessel called Indomitable." The Admiral laughed, a sound like grinding metal. One ship against 200. The humans must be more foolish than his intelligence officers had reported. Perhaps they thought their single vessel could somehow negotiate terms. How wrong they were. "Signal the human ship," Tavron ordered. "Demand their immediate surrender." On the human cruiser Indomitable, Captain June sat calmly in his command chair as the alien message came through. The translation software worked perfectly, converting the Velkan language into clear Korean text on his screen. "Captain," said Lieutenant Hana from the communications station, "they want us to surrender unconditionally. They say resistance will result in the destruction of our ship and bombardment of the planet." Captain June was a man of average height with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. He had commanded ships for 15 years and had never lost a battle. More importantly, he had never started one. "Send a reply," June said quietly. "Tell them we politely decline their generous offer. Ask them to reconsider their life choices." Lieutenant Hana looked at her captain with concern. "Sir, are you sure about the wording?" "Exactly as I said it." The message went out across space. On the Velkan flagship, Admiral Tavron read the human response and felt his temper rise. The humans dared to mock him. They dared to suggest that he, a conqueror of worlds, should reconsider anything. "Arrogant creatures," Tavron growled. "They think their single ship can stand against the might of the Velkan Empire. Show them what happens to those who defy us." But instead of ordering an immediate attack, the Admiral decided to make an example. Let the humans see the full power arrayed against them. Let them understand their hopeless situation before he crushed them. "All ships form intimidation pattern 7, he commanded. "I want that human captain to see every weapon we have pointed at his pathetic vessel." 200 Velkan warships began to move. They spread out in a massive formation that surrounded the human cruiser from every angle. Each ship was larger than the Indomitable. Many carried weapons that could crack a planet's crust. The formation was designed to create despair in enemy commanders, to make them realize that resistance was not just futile, but insane. Captain June watched the alien ships take their positions around him. His bridge crew remained calm and professional, though he could see the tension in their shoulders. "Impressive formation," June commented to no one in particular. "They really want to make sure we understand the situation." "Should we begin evasive maneuvers?" asked Lieutenant Day from the navigation station. "No need," June replied. "We're exactly where we need to be." On the Velkan flagship, Admiral Tavron expected to receive a surrender message within minutes. Any reasonable commander would see the impossible odds and choose to save lives rather than fight a battle that could not be won. Instead, something unexpected happened. The human captain opened a communication channel. "Greetings, Admiral Tavron," came the voice in perfect Velkan language. "I'm Captain June of the human vessel Indomitable. I hope your journey here wasn't too difficult. Space travel can be hard on the body, especially in ships as large as yours." Tavron was so surprised he almost forgot to respond. The human knew his name? How was that possible? And why was he making casual conversation as if they were meeting at a diplomatic reception instead of a battle? "Human," Tavron said slowly. "You are surrounded by the greatest military force your species has ever encountered. Surrender now, and your people will be treated with mercy." "That's very kind of you," June replied in the same friendly tone. "I have to say your ships are quite impressive. The design work on your command vessel is particularly striking. Those weapon arrays must take enormous amounts of power to operate. I imagine your engineers worked very hard to balance firepower with energy efficiency." The Admiral felt confused. This was not how surrender negotiations were supposed to work. Enemy commanders were supposed to be afraid, desperate, or angry. They were not supposed to compliment his ship design or discuss engineering problems. "You seem remarkably calm for someone facing certain death," Tavron said. "Oh, I wouldn't say certain," June replied cheerfully. "Death is rarely certain until it actually happens. There are always variables to consider. For instance, how long have your ships been running at full power since entering the system?" The question caught Tavron off guard. "What does that matter?" "Just curious about your operational procedures. We've noticed that Vulcan ships tend to run hot when maintaining combat formations for extended periods. It's quite fascinating from a technical standpoint." Admiral Tavron felt the first stirring of unease. How did this human know about Vulcan ship operations? How did he know anything about their technology or tactics? "Enough games," the Admiral said firmly. "You have 1 minute to surrender, or we will open fire." "I understand," Captain June said calmly. "Before you do, though, would you mind if I asked about your cultural traditions? I'm genuinely curious about Vulcan society. For instance, is it considered honorable in your culture to attack scientific research stations?" "What research stations?" Tavron demanded. "The ones your scouts destroyed in the outer system 3 days ago. I was just wondering if that was military necessity or cultural practice." The Admiral's blood ran cold. Those research stations had been classified targets, destroyed in secret to prevent them from sending warnings. How could this human possibly know about operations that had happened days before the main fleet even arrived? "1 minute is up," Tavron said, trying to regain control of the situation. "Of course," Captain June replied pleasantly. "I should mention, though, that we've prepared a small demonstration of human defensive capabilities. I hope you'll find it educational." Captain June pressed a button on his command chair. "All stations activate First Contact Protocol Alpha." Around the bridge, his crew began working at their stations with calm efficiency. Lieutenant Hana's fingers moved across her communications board, sending signals on dozens of different frequencies. Engineer Minho pulled up power distribution charts and began making adjustments to the ship's systems. "Protocol Alpha is active, Captain," Hana reported. Admiral Tavron watched from his flagship as the human cruiser remained motionless in space. The ship had not raised shields, charged weapons, or made any attempt to escape. Instead, it simply sat there like a metal island in the darkness of space. "What are they doing?" Tavron asked his tactical officer. "Unknown, Admiral. They appear to be broadcasting on multiple frequencies, but we cannot determine the content." Then something impossible happened. Every screen on every Vulcan ship began displaying the same message, written in perfect Vulcan script. "Greetings, Vulcan Empire. Please stand by for tactical analysis." "How did they penetrate our communication systems?" Tavron demanded. Before anyone could answer, the displays changed. New text appeared, this time accompanied by detailed technical diagrams of Vulcan ship designs. Captain June's voice came through the communication system with the same friendly tone as before. "I hope you don't mind, but we've taken the liberty of conducting a full analysis of your fleet composition. We thought you might find it interesting. On every Vulcan ship, the screens now showed complete blueprints of their own vessels. Engine specifications, weapon layouts, shield generators, life support systems. Everything was displayed in perfect detail. Your flagship, for example," June continued, "is a Hammer-class dreadnought, commissioned 18 months ago from the shipyards at Veltar Prime. It carries 42 heavy plasma cannons, 16 missile tubes, and a Class 7 shield generator." Admiral Tavron felt his foreheart skip a beat. The construction details of his flagship were classified at the highest levels of Vulcan military intelligence. How could these humans possibly know such information? "The weak points in your design," June went on conversationally, "are primarily in the power coupling systems between decks 12 and 15. If those couplings were to fail, your main weapons would lose approximately 60% of their effectiveness." Lieutenant Commander Hana looked up from her station on the Indomitable. "Captain, shall I proceed with the detailed analysis?" "Please do," June replied. Hana activated another system and her voice joined the broadcast. She spoke in the calm, professional tone of a military briefer. "Vulcan vessels in formation positions Alpha through Gamma. Your ships are running dangerously hot due to prolonged combat readiness. We recommend reducing power to non-essential systems to prevent reactor overload. On the Velkin ships, engineering officers checked their readings and found that the human was exactly right. Their power systems were indeed running at dangerous levels. Formation positions Delta through Omega, Hana continued. Your shield harmonics are creating interference patterns that reduce overall defensive effectiveness by 12%. Adjusting shield frequencies to the following specifications would correct this problem. She transmitted a series of technical modifications that would indeed improve the Velkin ship's defenses. The enemy was giving them advice on how to fight more effectively. Engineer Minho's voice joined the broadcast next. We've also noticed some concerning issues with your fleet's power consumption patterns. Your ships are using approximately 30% more energy than necessary to maintain current formation. Detailed power efficiency reports appeared on every Velkin screen, showing exactly how each ship could reduce energy consumption while maintaining the same combat effectiveness. This is impossible, Tavron said to his bridge crew. How do they know more about our own ships than we do? His chief engineer, a nervous Velkin named Kreltok, checked the human recommendations against their actual systems. Admiral, he said quietly, their analysis is completely accurate. They know our ships better than our own designers. Captain June's voice returned to the communication channel. We hope this information is helpful. We believe that understanding leads to better communication, and better communication leads to peaceful solutions. Admiral, reported the tactical officer, the humans are also broadcasting detailed tactical analyses of our formation patterns. The screens now showed the Velkin fleet from above, with each ship's position marked and analyzed. Arrows indicated optimal attack vectors, defensive blind spots, and communication weak points. It was as if the humans had studied Velkan military doctrine for years. Your current formation, June explained, is Standard Intimidation Pattern 7, first developed by Admiral Korthan approximately 50 years ago. It's very effective for psychological warfare, but it leaves your command ship vulnerable to attacks from the following directions. Red arrows appeared on the tactical display, showing exactly how an enemy could exploit the formation's weaknesses. We should also mention, added Navigation Officer Kyung, that your ship's computer systems have been experiencing some minor intrusions over the past few minutes. Don't worry, we haven't damaged anything or accessed classified information. We just wanted to demonstrate our capabilities. Admiral Tavron's hands began to shake. His fleet's computers had been invaded? When? How? Their cybersecurity systems were supposed to be impenetrable. Sir, his communication officer reported with fear in his voice. They're not just in our communication systems. They're in everything. Navigation, weapons control, life support. They could shut down our entire fleet if they wanted to. But they haven't, Tavron realized. They're showing us they could destroy us, but they're not doing it. As if he had heard the Admiral's words, Captain June spoke again. We want to be very clear that we have no hostile intentions toward your fleet or your people. We're simply demonstrating that we've been preparing for this encounter for quite some time. How long? Tavron asked, his voice barely a whisper. How long have we been studying you? June replied. Well, let's see. We first detected Velkin scout ships in this sector about 8 months ago. We've been observing your expansion patterns, analyzing your technology, and learning your languages ever since. The truth hit Admiral Tavron like a physical blow. His fleet hadn't surprised the humans at all. The humans had been watching them, learning about them, preparing for them. The single ship wasn't a desperate last defense. It was a trap. We know about your conquest of the Zellan system, June continued. We know about your subjugation of the BRICS colonies. We know about your standard occupation procedures and your typical surrender demands. You've been studying all our campaigns? Tavron asked. Knowledge is the foundation of understanding, Captain June replied, and understanding is the foundation of peace. We prefer to learn about our neighbors rather than fight them. Communications Officer Day spoke up next. Admiral Tavron, we've prepared a complete cultural analysis of Velkin society based on our observations. Would you like us to share our findings? The Admiral realized that his supposedly secret invasion had been watched and analyzed from the very beginning. These humans knew everything about his fleet, his tactics, and his people, and somehow that knowledge had given them power he couldn't understand or counter. Captain June leaned back in his command chair and smiled. The expression was gentle, almost apologetic. Admiral Tavron, we'd like to show you something that might help you understand our position better. We call it a minor demonstration of human defensive capabilities. What kind of demonstration? The Velkin admiral asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Nothing harmful, June assured him. We believe in showing rather than telling, and we want to be very clear about what we can and cannot do. On the human bridge, Chief Science Officer Nari looked up from her station. She was a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and steady hands. Captain, all systems are ready for the demonstration. Proceed, Nari. Nari's fingers danced across her control panel, activating electromagnetic pulse array, targeting peripheral ships only, minimum power setting. Admiral Tavron was about to ask what that meant when 12 of his ships suddenly went dark. All along the outer edge of his formation, Velkin warships lost main power simultaneously. Their engines shut down, their weapons went offline, and their shields collapsed. The ships didn't explode or break apart. They simply stopped working, drifting helplessly in space like dead metal hulks. What did you do? Tavron demanded. We used a focused electromagnetic pulse, Nari explained calmly over the communication channel. It's a non-invasive technology that temporarily disables electronic systems without causing permanent damage. Your affected ships will regain full power in approximately 4 hours. The Admiral stared at his tactical display in shock. 12 ships disabled instantly, without warning, without any visible attack. The human cruiser hadn't moved, hadn't fired weapons, hadn't even raised its shields. How is this possible? He whispered. Electromagnetic theory, Nari replied in the tone of a university professor. By generating precisely calibrated energy pulses, we can overload specific types of electronic systems while leaving others intact. Your life support systems, for example, are completely unaffected. Navigation Officer Kyung spoke up next. Admiral, we have another small demonstration if you're interested. Something a bit more visual. Before Tavron could respond, proximity alarms began sounding throughout his fleet. 3 large objects were approaching from the outer system, moving at incredible speed. Asteroids, his sensor officer reported with confusion. 3 asteroids from the system's belt are on collision course with our formation. How fast are they moving? Tavron asked. Too fast to be natural, Admiral. Someone is controlling them. Captain June's voice came through the communication system again. Please don't be concerned. The asteroids will pass safely by your ships. We just wanted to show you that we can move large objects with great precision. The 3 asteroids, each one larger than a Velkin destroyer, swept through the formation like guided missiles. They passed within meters of several ships, close enough that the Velkin crews could see the rocky surfaces through their viewports. But true to June's word, they didn't hit anything. The largest asteroid passed directly over Admiral Tavron's flagship, its shadow briefly blocking out the stars. Then all 3 rocks continued on their trajectory, disappearing into the darkness beyond the fleet. Tractor beam technology? Tavron asked weakly. Gravitational manipulation, Kyung replied cheerfully. We can adjust the gravitational fields around objects to change their movement paths. It's quite useful for asteroid mining and planetary engineering. And warfare, the Admiral added grimly. Well, yes, Kyung admitted. Those asteroids could have been moving much faster, and their trajectories could have been quite different. But we prefer peaceful demonstrations to actual combat. Communications Officer Day activated his station next. Admiral, we've also prepared a tactical analysis of what those asteroids could accomplish if used as weapons. Would you like to see the calculations? Without waiting for an answer, detailed mathematical projections appeared on every Velkin screen. The numbers showed exactly how much damage the asteroids could have done if they had impacted Velkin ships, instead of passing harmlessly by. Each asteroid carried enough kinetic energy to destroy approximately 6 of your vessels, Day explained matter-of-factly. The debris from those impacts would have created a chain reaction, potentially damaging 12 additional ships. Admiral Tavron realized that in the space of 10 minutes, the humans had demonstrated the ability to destroy or disable nearly half his fleet without firing a single conventional weapon. Admiral, his chief engineer reported with fear in his voice, we're detecting massive power surges throughout the system. There are energy sources out there that we can't identify. Ah, Captain June said, as if remembering something important. We should probably explain that part too. The demonstrations you've just witnessed weren't actually performed by our ship. What do you mean? Tavron asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer would terrify him. The Indomitable is primarily a communication and coordination vessel, June explained. The electromagnetic pulses came from automated defense platforms positioned throughout the system. The asteroid manipulation was handled by specialized gravity generators hidden in the asteroid belt itself. Engineer Minho joined the conversation. We've been preparing this system's defenses for several months, Admiral. What you're seeing is just a small sample of our capabilities. How many defense platforms? Tavron asked. Oh, we don't like to give exact numbers, Minho replied apologetically. But I will say that we can disable or destroy every ship in your fleet simultaneously if necessary. The Velkan admiral felt his world crumbling around him. His massive invasion fleet, 200 ships strong, was completely helpless against an enemy that could strike from anywhere without warning. This is impossible, he said. No single star system could have such defenses. You're absolutely right, Captain June agreed. No single star system could. But we're not just talking about one system, Admiral. We're talking about humanity. What does that mean? It means, June said gently, that every human world in this sector has been preparing for your arrival. We've had 8 months to get ready, and we've used that time well. Dr. Yuna, the fleet's xenopsychologist, spoke up for the first time. Admiral Tavron, we've conducted a detailed analysis of Velkan psychology and military doctrine. Your species values strength and respects displays of superior power. We hope that by demonstrating our capabilities without causing casualties, we could open a dialogue rather than a war. You're telling me this was all planned? Tavron asked. The single ship, the demonstrations, everything? Of course, June replied. We knew you would approach with overwhelming force, expecting easy victory. We wanted to show you that appearances can be deceiving, and that there are different kinds of strength. The Admiral looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. He saw fear, confusion, and the beginning of something he had never seen in Velkan warriors before, doubt about their own superiority. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now, Captain June said, we talk. Admiral Tavron stared at his tactical display, trying to understand what was happening to his fleet. The 12 disabled ships were still drifting powerless, and the psychological impact of the asteroid demonstration had shaken his crews. But worse than that was the growing realization that he had walked into a trap. Captain June, he said slowly, you mentioned that your ship wasn't responsible for these demonstrations. If the Indomitable is just a communication vessel, where are the real weapons? I'm glad you asked, June replied with what sounded like genuine pleasure. Computer, execute revelation protocol. The space around the Velkan fleet began to shimmer and distort, like heat waves rising from hot pavement. Admiral Tavron watched in growing horror as dozens of shapes materialized out of what he had thought was empty. Human ships appeared. Everywhere, sleek destroyers flickered into visibility between the Velkan vessels. Massive cruisers uncloaked directly above and below the formation. Carrier ships emerged from behind asteroids where they had been hiding. In the span of 30 seconds, the Velkan fleet found itself not surrounding one lone human ship, but surrounded by a force they had never detected. Stealth technology, Tavron whispered. Advanced optical and sensor camouflage, confirmed Commander Bach, whose voice now came from the destroyer Soul's Pride, positioned directly alongside the Velkan flagship. We've been here the entire time, Admiral. We've been watching your approach for the past 6 hours. Tavron's tactical officer began counting the human ships as they appeared on sensors. Admiral, he reported with a shaking voice, I count 47 vessels. No, wait, 53. The numbers keep changing as more ships decloak. 68 human ships and counting, the sensor officer updated. They're everywhere, sir. Above us, below us, between our formations. Captain Shin's voice joined the communication from the carrier New Busan. Admiral Tavron, I want to assure you that every one of your ships is currently within weapons range of at least 3 human vessels. We've been very careful about positioning. The Velkan admiral felt something he had never experienced in 30 years of military service. Complete tactical helplessness. His fleet was not just outnumbered, it was outmaneuvered, outgunned, and completely at the mercy of an enemy that had been invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. How long have you been there? He asked. Some of us have been in position for 3 days, replied Commander Bach. Others arrived this morning. We wanted to make sure we had adequate coverage before your fleet entered the system. You've been planning this for months, Tavron realized. Actually, years, Captain June corrected gently. We've been tracking Vulcan expansion for a very long time, Admiral. We knew you would eventually reach human space, and we wanted to be ready when you did. Dr. Yuna's voice came through the communication system, with the calm tone of a scientist presenting research data. Admiral, we've conducted extensive psychological profiles of your species based on our observations of your campaigns against other worlds. Vulcans are proud warriors who respect strength and superior tactics. You also have a strong sense of honor and tend to withdraw from battles you cannot win, rather than sacrifice your people needlessly. You think you know us that well? Tavron asked. We've been studying your people for longer than you might imagine, Dr. Yuna replied. We know about your military traditions, your codes of honor, your technological capabilities, and your strategic doctrine. We also know that you're not mindless conquerors. You're soldiers following orders in service to your empire. Commander Bach spoke up again. Admiral, please have your tactical officer scan our fleet composition. I think you'll find it educational. Tavron nodded to his tactical officer, who began analyzing the human ships. What he found made his blood run cold. Admiral, the officer reported, the human fleet includes specialized vessels I've never seen before. Long-range artillery platforms, electronic warfare ships, something that appears to be a mobile repair facility, and... He paused, checking his readings again. Sir, one of their ships is larger than anything in our database. I think it's a dreadnought. Actually, Captain Shin corrected, the Sejong the Great is officially classified as a battle carrier. It carries both heavy weapons and a full squadron of fighter craft. Would you like to see them? Before anyone could answer, small craft began launching from the massive human ship. Not dozens, but hundreds of them. Fighters, bombers, and support craft filled the space around the Vulcan fleet like a swarm of metallic insects. 15 fighter squadrons, Shin reported casually, each one equipped with anti-capital ship weapons and advanced targeting systems. They're currently running practice attack patterns around your formation. Admiral Tavron watched as human fighters weaved between his ships with impossible precision, demonstrating that they could strike any target they chose. His own fighter bays were still sealed, his pilots unaware that death was dancing around them. This is not possible, he said for the third time that day. Our intelligence report said humans were a primitive species with limited military capabilities. Your intelligence was based on our outer colonies, Engineer Minho explained. We deliberately kept our best technology hidden from public view. The ships and equipment you observed were real, but they weren't representative of our full capabilities. Captain June's voice became more serious. Admiral, we need you to understand something important. This demonstration isn't about showing off or intimidating you. It's about preventing unnecessary bloodshed. What do you mean? We know about your standard conquest procedures, Dr. Yuna said. After defeating a system's defenses, you typically occupy the major population centers and demand tribute from the surviving government. Resistance movements form, leading to years of guerrilla warfare and civilian casualties. That's accurate, Tavron admitted. We wanted to avoid that entire cycle, June explained. By demonstrating our true capabilities now, we hope to convince you that conquest of human space is not feasible, not because we're unwilling to fight, but because we're too well prepared. Commander Bach added, every human system in this sector has similar defenses, Admiral. Hidden fleets, automated weapons platforms, asteroid fortifications. What you're seeing here isn't unique, it's standard. The truth hit Admiral Tavron like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just prepared to defend one world. They had prepared to defend all their worlds. His invasion fleet, which he had thought overwhelming, was nothing more than a test of human defenses. How many ships do you really have? He asked quietly. Enough, Captain June replied simply. But more importantly, Admiral, we have something your previous enemies didn't have. What's that? Time to prepare, detailed intelligence about your capabilities, and the technological resources of an entire interstellar civilization working together. We also have something else, added Dr. Yuna. Respect for your people and your culture. We don't want to be your enemies, Admiral Tavron. We'd prefer to be your neighbors. The Vulcan admiral looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. These were warriors who had conquered 17 worlds, soldiers who had never known defeat. Now they sat in stunned silence, realizing that they were completely outmatched by an enemy they had underestimated. What do you want from us? Tavron asked. We want to talk, Captain June replied. We want to find a way for our peoples to coexist without warfare. Admiral Tavron sat in his command chair, surrounded by the wreckage of everything he thought he knew about warfare. His fleet of 200 ships was trapped inside a human formation that had appeared from nowhere. Every tactical advantage he had counted on was gone. Every assumption about human capabilities had been proven wrong. "Captain June," he said finally, "what are your terms?" The human captain's voice remained calm and friendly, as if they were negotiating a trade agreement instead of discussing the fate of an entire invasion fleet. "Our terms are quite simple, Admiral. We want you and your people to leave this system safely and return to Vulcan space. That's all." Tavron couldn't hide his surprise. "Well, not quite all," June admitted. "We'd also like to establish formal diplomatic relations between our peoples. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, perhaps some scientific cooperation. We believe both our civilizations could benefit from peaceful contact." The Admiral looked at his tactical display, where human ships still surrounded his fleet in perfect formation. "You're not demanding tribute? Territorial concessions? Reparations for the research stations we destroyed?" "No," Dr. Yuna replied. "We understand that you were following orders from your government. The soldiers who destroyed our stations were acting under what they believed to be legitimate military authority. We hold no grudges against individuals for following their duty." Admiral Tavron felt confused. In 30 years of military service, he had never encountered an enemy who offered such generous terms from a position of overwhelming strength. Usually, when one side held such a decisive advantage, they demanded unconditional surrender and harsh penalties. "Why?" he asked. "You could destroy my entire fleet. You could demand anything you wanted. Why offer such mercy?" Captain June was quiet for a moment before answering. "Admiral, may I ask you a personal question?" "What?" "How many civilians died during your conquest of the BRICS colonies?" The question hit Tavron unexpectedly. "Approximately 40,000, he replied automatically, then wondered why he had answered so honestly, and how many Vulcan soldiers were killed or wounded in that campaign. 8,000 casualties, Tavron said, his voice growing quieter. "Do you think those deaths were necessary?" Dr. Yuna asked gently. "They were the cost of conquest," the Admiral replied, but his words sounded hollow even to himself. "What if there had been another way?" June asked. "What if the BRICS had been given the chance to surrender with honor? What if they had been offered partnership instead of subjugation?" Tavron thought about the question seriously. The BRICS had fought desperately because they knew Vulcan occupation meant slavery for their people. If they had been offered better terms, "You're saying that mercy is more powerful than force?" he asked. "I'm saying that mercy from a position of strength creates respect," June replied. "Force creates fear, and fear creates rebellion. Respect creates cooperation." Commander Bach's voice joined the conversation. "Admiral, your fleet came here expecting to find a weak enemy that you could easily defeat. Instead, you found an enemy that could have destroyed you but chose not to. Which response do you think will have a greater impact on Vulcan strategic planning?" The truth of those words hit Admiral Tavron like a revelation. If the humans had simply destroyed his fleet, the Vulcan Empire would have sent a larger force to avenge the defeat. But this would force his government to completely reconsider their expansion plans. "You're not just defeating my fleet," he realized. "You're defeating the entire concept of expanding into human space." "Exactly," Dr. Yuna confirmed. "By demonstrating that conquest is impossible while offering friendship as an alternative, we're hoping to redirect Vulcan expansion in more peaceful directions." Captain Shin spoke up from the battle carrier. "Admiral, we've prepared detailed reports on human technological and military capabilities. We're willing to share some of this information with your government so they can make informed decisions about future policy." "You would share military intelligence with us?" "Selected information," June clarified. "Enough to show that military conquest of human space would be extremely costly, but not enough to compromise our security. We want your leaders to understand the situation clearly." Engineering Officer Minho added, "We're also prepared to offer technological exchange agreements. Human medical technology, for instance, might be valuable to your people. In return, we'd be interested in learning about Vulcan metallurgy and energy systems." Admiral Tavron felt his worldview shifting fundamentally. These humans were offering to turn enemies into allies, to transform a military defeat into the beginning of a beneficial relationship. "What about my superiors?" he asked. How do I explain returning from a conquest mission with trade proposals instead of victory reports? You tell them the truth, Captain June replied simply. You encountered an enemy that was too well prepared to defeat, but willing to negotiate instead of destroying your fleet. You preserved the lives of 40,000 Velkan soldiers and opened the possibility of peaceful expansion through alliance rather than conquest. My career will be over, Tavron said quietly. Perhaps, Dr. Yuna agreed. Or perhaps you'll be seen as the admiral who prevented a disastrous war and opened a new era of Velkan diplomacy. History has a way of vindicating those who choose wisdom over pride. The admiral looked around his bridge one more time. His officers were listening to every word, and he could see them processing the implications. These humans had outmaneuvered them completely, but they were offering a way to save face while avoiding catastrophe. If I agree to these terms, Tavron said slowly, what guarantees do I have that you won't attack Velkan space? The same guarantee you're giving us, June replied. None except our word and our demonstrated character. But Admiral, consider this. If we wanted to attack Velkan space, what's stopping us? We've had months to study your technology and tactics. We know the locations of your major worlds. If we were aggressive conquerors, wouldn't we already be attacking? The logic was undeniable. The humans had every advantage and had chosen not to use it. Very well, Admiral Tavron said finally. I will convey your proposals to my government and recommend that they be given serious consideration. Excellent, Captain June said, and the genuine pleasure in his voice was unmistakable. We'll begin preparing diplomatic packages for transmission to Velkan space. Cultural information, trade proposals, scientific exchange programs. One more question, the Admiral said. How many other species have you been observing? There was a pause before June answered, and when he spoke, his voice carried a hint of amusement. Oh, we've been around longer than most people think, Admiral. We just prefer to watch and learn before introducing ourselves properly. As the human ships began to move aside, creating a clear path for the Velkan fleet to leave the system, Admiral Tavron realized that this encounter would change everything. The balance of power in this sector of space had shifted completely. Not through conquest, but through the demonstration of overwhelming capability combined with unexpected restraint. Safe travels. Admiral Tavron, Captain June's voice followed them as the Velkan fleet began its retreat. We look forward to getting to know your people better. As his ships limped away from New Sol, leaving 12 vessels behind to be repaired by human engineers, Admiral Tavron reflected on the strangest defeat of his career. He had come to conquer gods and discovered that the gods preferred to make friends. The retreat of the Velkan armada would become a turning point in galactic history, though few realized it at the time. Within months, other aggressive species would learn that the primitive humans had been quietly watching them all along, studying their weaknesses and preparing defenses they couldn't imagine. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of human diplomacy had begun.